into our little blue world. It was witnessed by a 7th Seraph member. The Seraph in question was First Lieutenant Artur Voronin. He was ordered by Rasputin to manually carry munitions in preparation for something. In the process of doing this, a terrible storm broke out, and the lieutenant was forced to take cover as the inclement weather included localized lightning strikes in close proximity to his position. Perhaps this is the day in which the world went dark, for it was only as he approached a shelter that was attempting to harbor civilians that he saw the traveler overhead, acting as an eye to the storm as it moved. The traveler was, however, unmoved by Voronin's dutiful actions as he attempted to save one of his compatriots. It kept moving, making its way to the place where it would do battle with the darkness. It would stop above the place that would one day become the last city. One of the stranger records of the collapse and the darkness that consumed humanity comes from the Black Armory. Their members included its 3 founders, were holed up in one of their facilities, attempting to keep whatever was outside at bay. There was a constant howling outside of their bunker, which was always loudest during the nights. One night, something began to pound against the walls. They did not hold. The Black Armory papers tell us little of the aggressor. Henrietta Miran, who wrote them, did not see the aggressor herself, but she perceived a smell of wet earth and a sound that she had never heard before, like a machine being stretched and then compressed. Whatever the thing was that attacked the Black Armory families, it seemed to be unnatural.
Opponent claimed Zone A. Zone C captured.
Henrietta Miran lost one of her fellow founding sisters, Helga Rasmussen.
Zone B captured.
Zone
advantage is
Adelaide
yours.
Miran, to this beast. Although Adelaide's consciousness was not completely gone, later it was possible for her to be uploaded into an exo-body to live again as Ada-1. Whilst there is nothing that allows us to confirm the nature of the creature, the very idea that it sounded like metal being stretched and then compressed draws us back to the idea of the darkness's gravitational powers, the ability to pull apart anything that is a foe and then to compress it back together, just like it did to Yang Wei. It's not confirmed, but if this is the case, then perhaps this gives us an idea of what the mysterious nature of the darkness's forces was like during the collapse. The last of the records that we know of on the collapse came from the Journal of Cade 6. The journal entry was made after Cade had transitioned to a post-human life as an exo. The records are of a strange nature and demonstrate the fragility of Exo's memory after they've been rebooted multiple times.
Zone B captured.
Cade begins telling us the memory of a hunt for a wizard on the moon.
Opponent claims
Then
Zone C.
his memory transitions to something which I can only assume is a moment in which the darkness claimed some form of victory before being defeated by the Traveler. The record reads as follows. Bounties up on the board.
Zone B
target.
lost.
Real
Now
meaniness
you are the hunted.
You know the deal. These horrors live on for just about forever. Only I don't count what they do as living. They lurk around in the shadows for centuries, hoarding knowledge and conjuring up thousands of ways to chew up light and light. Doesn't matter much. I've learned a few tricks myself. Fast forward a spell, I'm in the guts of a deep dark cavern deep below the surface. Can't tell exactly where or when. EDZ maybe?
The flames have gone cold.
In any case, I'm right where I need to be. Tucked into a shadow, camel cloak coming to keep me well out of sight.
Lost today.
Right place, right time. Bam. I dart out from cover, cloak flaring. Out from underneath, I lunge, lifting my hand cannon. It barks out orders, bathes the room in firelight. The bullets are true, they always are. 3 thrall turn to ash before they know what hit them. Now it's just me and the target. Big bad bounty. I'm ready to collect. My blade gleams in the sick green terror of his eyes. Strike that. This is all wrong. Timeline's way off. Realigning. There's no bounty. No hide. I'm out in plain sight. Sky is torn open. and there's nothing and nobody left in this ruined world but me and the boiling shadow all around. Whatever it is hits me before I can level my gun. Doesn't matter. Tendrils of pain crawl over my splayed fingers, my outstretched arms, my shoulders, my neck, my screaming mouth as it consumes. I'm being enveloped. Everything is wrong. Primordial. My system goes sideways. All but my senses. It wants me to witness this. The world. Its world now. Suffocating in the black poison. I collapse. We all collapse. Perhaps it is best for us to take heart in the knowledge that nothing is invincible, as demonstrated when the traveler cast the darkness out of Sol. But the days of the collapse have long passed, and as humanity grew in power once again, so did the Guardians, so did the traveler, and so did the darkness once again. The Spectre has returned, and this time it is wiser for its loss. It will not be bargained with. It will not lose out again. And when darkness covers the system this time, things will be different, as they should be. Time heals all wounds, they say. But if one is to gouge and scratch at the scabs, a wound will stay open and bleed anew. After the collapse, the traveler remained dormant, wounded from its climactic battle with the darkness. The scars it bore from this conflict were far from healed, and it would not heal soon if the darkness could help it.
This is not
The great
a
pyramids
friend.
had retreated,
It is the gift
but
of
in
a
a place not known or
I
seen,
sure is a wonderful
their
teacher.
dark influence
He
would
speaks
begin
very
to
highly
creep
of you
back
as well,
into the
friend.
world, and the wounds of the traveler would be plied open once more, like the bark on a birch, exposing the sap beneath to new, clawing hands. The place the darkness now inhabited was known as the Black Garden, a place inhabited by a great deal of life and a great deal of evil. Its overseers are the Vex. More specifically, the Vex of the Soul Divisive. The Black Garden exists out of time and out of space, and the Vex of the Soul Divisive keep it this way to safeguard their stewardship of it. It is unknown when the Dark Heart manifested itself within the reaches of the Garden, but it is known that the Vex of the Soul Divisive took the moment to make a calculation, and that calculation would bring them at odds with the rest of the Vex collective. They saw the immense power before them, and that it could bend reality to its will. It was in this moment that they realized it was a power they could not surpass. Other Vex subtypes would move to counter similar enemies by manipulating some other paracausal force, like when Guardians were
What
lured
catches
into
your
freeing the
eye?
Vex of the Vault of Glass from the Taken by using Pradith's transmission. The
Marvelous.
Vex of the Soul Divisive were different. They would see an insurmountable obstacle,
Oh, you have
and
an eye for
instead of fighting
craftsmanship.
it or finding some alternate way around it,
A quality
bind
accessory.
themselves to it. The mathematical calculations of the Vex
I
would
do
lead them
enjoy
to a
your
simple
visits.
conclusion that they should join with a power that they could not defeat. They should join with the darkness to survive it. And so the Soul Divisive were empowered with a primordial darkness that could only be seen within the garden. But there was one who would see the path to undoing this shadow. Her existence was a rumor, her name unknown to most, but to those that have at least glimpsed her, she would be known as the Exo Stranger. She was there to watch us rise in the Cosmodrome, to watch us fight through the hive on Luna, and to call us to Venus so that she could tell us of the evil that lurked in the shadowed heart of the garden. At her instruction, we would commune with the Queen of the Awoken, and at her bidding we would fight our way to the endless steps. There we faced Zydron, the Gate Lord of the Vex who watched over the entrance to the Black Garden. We would take its eye to Mars and use it to access the Black Garden via the Vex Gateway in the Valley of Kings. It would be here that we would enter into the Black Garden, and we would face this menace for ourselves. The formless mass that was at its center was the heart of this dark infestation. It was what the Exo-Stranger told us to rip out, so that our traveling would heal, as one rips out a nest of hornets from a tree. The power of the darkness was made manifest into 3 great Vex frames known as the Sol Progeny. But against the odds, we struck down these foes, and with them, vanquished the darkness that had embodied itself within. With the last frame falling before us, we stood and saw the heart as it began to implode. Suddenly, the darkness was banished,
They will come back.
and the garden
Mules.
emerged, wrenched to the surface by the removal of the malignant growth at its heart.
Take this with
This
care
action,
and see it
At
through.
last, the traveler began to slowly heal,
He
awakening once more.
have
The Vex of the
many
Sol
duties,
Derisive were not done yet,
be
though.
careful.
Constantly, they
received
would make
little
efforts
sparrow
to
from
wrench
this
the Black
holiday.
Garden from the
It
light
is a fast
and to bring it
order.
back into the
I
mists of
approve.
time and space once again. This was the objective of the Undying Mind, which we would destroy, but not for the last time. Last time that we would venture into this garden either. This place is primordial and is always tied to the darkness. It will not be the last
I am
time
here when you
we
need me.
venture here.
It is easier to find me now.
And so a long and uneasy silence began.
Yesterday, a
But
child
it did
came
not
to
take
me,
long for
carried
our
a painted
hubris to
shield
tell
of
us
paper.
that this was a
I turned
time
to him.
of victory
He threw
only.
the shield at my
We
head.
called this time
A
the
young
Age of
tiger. I
Triumph,
love it.
when we had started to reclaim the system and successfully pushed back the evils of Atheon, Crota, Scolus, Oryx, and Axis. It seemed as though this Age of Light was just the beginning of an unprecedented time of advancement.
Listen to your ghost.
And we
It
Guardians
is a
would
smart
step forth
ghost.
into the system once more and would fight through the menaces of Sol one by one. Such ambitions were foolish
Your
at
light is
best.
strong.
Gaul showed us that.
Perhaps one day
Gaul's
you will teach
arrival
me
would
some
not
of these
only
new
begin
tricks.
the Red War,
Perhaps
but
one
would
day
also
I
begin
will
to show
teach you
us
some of my
Guardians the
old
reality
ones.
of the light's frailty. It was a power that could be taken away, much like anything else. We would make our efforts to stand and reclaim our light. But even as we did battle against the Dominus,
The
there was an
trials of
overwhelming sense
Osiris
of
await
an
your
important
entrance,
question that
friend.
loomed.
Test
If
yourself.
Gaul wielded
See how
our
high
own
you can
powers of the
climb.
light
Remember,
against
the
us,
city looks to
something
you.
became
Be
brutally
the
clear.
example they need.
There was a clear difference between the light as a source of power and the light as a moral persuasion. Regardless of the nuance, we struck down Gaul and won the day. But this moment and this question would linger on, even past the Dominus's downfall. In the moment of Dominus Gaul's death, something utterly mysterious happened. From Gaul's broken body, a manifestation of light appeared, forming into a version of Gaul greater in size than the tower. It stood before the traveler and proclaimed victory over all humanity. But as it declared its new age, something happened. The traveler's bonds were broken, and the cage surrounding it began to collapse. In a final shrieking moment of defeat, Gaul was destroyed, and the cage around the traveler shattered. As it freed itself, the traveler was awoken once more, and a wave of light spread out across the system and the stars. As this light headed out into the reaches of the spaces that we had never even seen, it touched distant nebulas and even spread out to the reaches of our whole galaxy. But as it reached further into dark space, something else awoke in the shadows. There the fleet of pyramids lay, and they too began to awaken. It is perhaps as Ulan Tan said, that without the light there cannot be darkness, as their symmetry is a necessary feature of the universe. In response to the travelers' return to life, the pyramids began their march throughout the void, a march that would take them to Sol's borders. But it was not the first time this force had been witnessed. Callus, the emperor of the Cabal, requisitioned his scribes to create what was known as the Chronicon, a history that charted his times since exile by Gaul, a history that would eventually merge into a fictitious recollection of the future that had not yet occurred. During the time in the past, though, seemingly Callus made contact with the pyramid ships, or the darkness in some form. He would name this force the Black Edge, and made it clear that he would be the herald of its calling, even to go as far as to one day anoint us as his shadow of shadows, showing
Trials
his
of Osiris.
and the darkness's ability to completely end the universe, knowing that the shadow of shadows would be the last living being accompanying him to the end of existence as the darkness closed in around us. All of this fictitious future is yet to unfold, and may never unfold now that the pyramids have arrived in the system and their intent is still somewhat unknown. But for now, we have more tales of woe to spin. In our tale of darkness, there are few that reached to understand it, but those who did gleaned knowledge and power that some others never even dreamed of attaining. There are many individuals in these different stories that will have reached and will indeed have found that its power was enticing. Their names are now legend. From Dredgen Yor, previously known as Razor's Ear, to the Shadows of Yor, led by Dredgen Vale and Dredgen Bane, known better as Tevin Grey and Shin Malfa. But one such individual has been known by many more names in their lifetime. Germain, Wu Ming, Dredgen Hope. We, however, would know them simply as the Drifter. He would be one of 3 individuals within the system that the Nine would observe to embrace the darkness's power and to use it in a manner that marked him apart. The first of these beings was the Exo Stranger, and the second of these was Eris Lord. This all occurred after the Drifter used a motive dark to summon a taken captain to fight for him. Such a use of darkness and the demonstration of its command was important, even if the Drifter cared not for the source of power, only that it wanted to survive. It was in this moment that the emissary of the Nine appeared to the Drifter and stated that he had garnered the attention of the Nine. With this, the Nine gifted him what is referred to as the Hall, a mass of potential that links us to the Nine-controlled space as best we can tell. Inside the Hall, the Nine would allow the Drifter to control a variety of different Taken, and he would use these in the creation of Gambit. These combat exercises would pit Guardians against both the enemies of the system and each other, and would encourage Guardians to embrace the darkness. However, in spite of how much this would lead to the greater acceptance of darkness within the Guardian ranks, the Drifter's true purpose would be that of survival. The Nine would communicate with the Drifter through the use of their emissary, who previously had known the Drifter in her past life as the Guardian known as Orin the Lost. The Nine would allow us glimpses into these communications, as well as various other interactions, through the invitations of the Nine, and they would culminate in a vision that would give us a startling prediction of where our future would take us.
Might just pull this scam off.
Guardian down.
And when the time comes,
Only one enemy is left.
ready.
Only one ally is left. It is in their hands. This round is theirs, but you can win the next. Opponent revived.
A horse.
Opposing team is looking to steal victory.
Okay.
Match point.
We have enjoyed watching you.
We came to say farewell. Our attention is required elsewhere.
All right. Thanks for the memories, you lunatic. Anything else I can do for you?
You're already doing. Keep playing the game.
Only one ally is left. It is in their hands now. Next time, my friend. Next time.
This vision of calamity would bring the Drifter to his
He
ultimate
cannot
goal,
always win.
that of
but
creating
the
a
Guardian
refuge
must
within
never
the
give
hole
up.
where he and a limited few others would be able to survive. He foresaw what was soon to come, a wave of darkness that waited silently in the void between the stars, slowly encroaching upon our home with one intent: death. The Drifter would reserve a place for us in this group of survivors, given his trust in us. At least, if we were to side with him over the Vanguard. The doom the Drifter foresaw was not far off from its appearance in Sol, but before the main force of the Dark Fleet arrived, we would have to contend with their Harbinger, and with the Vanguard of their forces. Something dark was calling us from the moon, and now was the time to respond. The darkness had been whispered about in the corners of the system for quite some time, from the court of the Awoken Queen displaying a holographic projection
Welcome
of
to the trials of
the sky
Osiris.
reports of the hidden, showing something mysterious on Luna, to the whisperings of Emperor Callus, who stated that some great apocalypse was on the horizon. But the first tangible signs of this true threat would not emerge until we returned to Luna. The hive there had reformed after much internal
There is
strife,
nothing but the
thanks to the politicking of the four
This
daughters
fight.
of Crota,
Go!
and some interference from outside hive influences. The hidden swarm was once again united. Now a scarlet keep arose above the surface of the moon, and Hashladun, Besurith, Kinox, and Voshir, the four daughters of Crota, all presided over the great wealth and hive empire. Guardian forces responded to the resurgence with a counterattack that involved the mass deployment of Guardians, as well as auxiliary FOTC forces,
Only one ally
providing
is
heavy
left.
ground
It is
support,
in their hands.
air support,
Don't
and
let
even a
this
small
slow you
detachment of
down.
armor
Try
in the
again.
form of the infamous Amanda Holliday-designed Drake tanks. The bulk of Hive forces
Your
were
opponents
successfully
celebrate the
pushed
lead.
back
Crush
to the
their
region
party.
known as Sorrow's Harbor, and we pushed deeper into the Hive fortress's interior to discover more about our enemy. It was at this point that we were informed by Ikora that Eris Morn had traveled to the moon to investigate this disturbance herself. We had to venture in after her, and it was as we descended into these depths that we saw the true nature of our foe. We first encountered Hive.
Only one ally is left. It is in their hands.
They had a similar bioenergy signature to them, but were not the same. That should have been our first warning. We would not get a second. As we rounded the corner at the end of the canyon that marked the enduring abyss, we saw it. The source of all the
You
darkness
lost
on
this.
Luna.
Does not matter. Wins the
Pyramid.
next.
Who knows how long it had sat there in silence? Who knows how many battles
You
it
are
had
behind,
influenced,
but
and how
not
many
for long.
guardians it had aided in killing or corrupting? Its presence had wieled the power of those who served the logic of the sword, and it was now that its full power was revealed. It could animate our worst fears and reincarnate them as nightmares, shades of its own power that would don the forms of our greatest foes. From Tanax, who needed no house to slay Andal Brass, former Hunter Vanguard,
Guardian,
Crota,
it is you
who
alone.
along with his
Be
many
brave.
blades was
Just
the
the
bane
two
of
of you
hundreds
now.
of Guardians in the assault
Fight.
armada Ubrian, Tagol, who had stolen the light
They
from
tried
us
very hard
and used
to
it
kill
as his
you,
own,
but you are
proclaiming
like me,
himself
very
to be the
stubborn.
next in a
Your
new
ally is
generation
back
of
in the
Cabal
fight.
Guardians. We needed to infiltrate
The
the
other
pyramid,
team leads.
and
Let this
Eris Morn
motivate you.
helped us to accomplish this. By recovering a hive cryptoglyph and obtaining the cleansed essences of these nightmares, we were able to craft the Dreambane armor, which gave us a unique defense against the pyramid and its nightmares. Once we had a full set of this armor, we were able to bypass the defensive kinetic barriers on the pyramid's periphery. At first, it seemed like we had an advantage, but the pyramid soon showed us the
is you
truth.
alone. Be
It had
brave.
allowed us to bypass its defenses, and soon we were escorted into its depths
You lost
by a
it.
beam of
Does
energy
not
that
matter.
prevented our
Win the
escape.
next one.
Inside the pyramid, we faced many nightmares and were led further into its
The
darker
opposing
depths.
team leads. Show
When we
them you are
reached the
hungry.
apex of the pyramid, we saw a statue and a strange artifact that descended from it. We reached out. As we claimed the artifact, we were transported to a strange place that we had not seen in many years. We were back in the Black Garden, standing before the mesa once more. But this time, a dark figure stepped out of the shadow behind us, and it began to speak.
Only
made
one
it.
ally is left. It is in their hands now. The next round will be yours. Surely.
We have heard your cries, Ram.
Opponents
And
have match point, but
will.
you can still win this.
Who are you? Don't you recognize us? We are not your friend. We are not your enemy. We are your salvation.
The Dark Messenger's words would not be the last time we would hear from this force of darkness. The artifact that we recovered would uncover a signal that led us through a Vex gate beneath the lunar surface.
You are all
This
that's
led us
left.
once more
This is your
into the
fight to
garden,
win.
and we would face the Sol Divisive once more. Upon defeating their Vex minds that seemed empowered by some greater power, we would find another of the statues
God,
Lady Larian
God.
Lake
Showdown.
tapped two
Next time, my
swords.
friend. Next
It
time.
eventually emerged to be a pyramid scale, one of the smaller ships that always accompanied the pyramids. From this moment on,
I have been
the artifact began to
disintegrated
communicate with us.
Very
Every week then, we
Take
would
up,
receive new
conquer
messages
me,
from
and
the dark,
return.
which swayed us consistently towards a truth that perhaps we should always have accepted. That darkness and the logic of the sword was a necessary part of the universe, and that in spite of all of its clear evil in our terms, that as the rules of the universe were written, the darkness was not necessarily wrong. Eris Morn would also slowly begin to realize this truth, and we would see her embrace at least the idea that the dark and light needed to coexist to an extent in the universe. She would describe it as a sea filled with water and poison. Balance between the two did not mean half water and half poison. It would mean mostly water, but at least a small amount of poison. The effects of our incursions into the pyramids would ultimately send us down the dark path towards a new power. It would be the shattering blow to our innocence, and it would lead us to a
Trials of
moment where we would
Osiris.
find need for powers anew, and a far more terrible persuasion. The darkness was now truly a part of our war for Sol. The first pyramid was here, and it was but a vanguard to a force far greater than any that we had borne witness to since the collapse. The true power of that force would be
Your
revealed to
life is
all of
precious.
Osiris,
You only have
and when
one.
he saw their
Kill.
conquest, it seemed all but inevitable. Osiris's warning came to him first in the Infinite Forest, after we had defeated yet another threat from the past. The Undying Mind, a foe we had faced previously in the Black Garden, had returned. It had sent multiple copies of itself into thousands of different timelines, and from those timelines was attempting to carry out its primary and secondary directives. Firstly, to reclaim control of the Black Garden, and then to further assault the forces of the light, an assault that could lead to our demise.
You are
Agora and the Vanguard responded to this by creating a device that could wrench the Undying Mind from the timelines in which it hid, thus allowing us to slay every instance of it until it was dead for good. We fought hard through countless copies of the Undying Mind, and in the end, defeated the final
Only
copy.
one ally is left.
When this happened,
It's in their hands.
all simulated future timelines in the Infinite Forest converged upon a single future that was inevitable. A darker version of the system, where the traveler was gone, and where the monolithic pyramid had taken its place above the last city.
Your opponent's lead.
Cyrus beheld
Can
this
come
new
back
threat
from
within the Infinite Forest, and understanding that Vex computations are unfathomably accurate, would begin to work to counteract this threat wherever possible. But the darkness had arrived, and there was nothing that anyone could do to stop that. Its force, the true force of darkness, would be here soon. And before that happened, we would
Only
need to
one
rouse
ally
new
is left.
daylight to our
It's in their
cause,
hands.
so that we might at
Your
least
opponent
have a
took the
small
round.
hope
Takes the
to
next.
stand against the wave of darkness.
Your opponent celebrated the lead. Crush their party.
For a time there was silence, and whilst it was impossible to forget what we had seen on the moon and what we had fought, we went onwards in our journey to make Sol safe, defeating the Red Legion threat on Mercury before we saw that same Red Legion threat
Only
attempt their
one
last
ally is left.
desperate gambit
It's in
against
their
our
hands.
forces. The Red
This
Legion
one
would
was for
attempt to
your
slam
end. Next
Romanti
time,
into
my
the city to cause an extinction-level event and to gain vengeance against humanity. In the process of
point.
defending
Take
the
back
city
the fight.
against this, we would need to reactivate the Warmind bunkers beneath the surfaces of the moons and planets of Io, Luna, and Earth. Within these bunkers, we would see Rasputin's major defensive systems being reactivated. And by the time we activated the final bunker on Io, we saw something even more alarming, thanks to Rasputin's ability to keep vigil across the entire system.
Only one ally is left.
Rasputin displayed
It's in
to
their
us
hands.
a massive fleet of ships. It was converging on our borders. The fleet was comprised of pyramid ships.
Next time, my
It was
friend.
clear
Next
that
time.
soon they would be arriving at our shores. Rasputin's systems made a point of tracking
One
the
loss
fleet
is
and
nothing.
its many strange
One
vessels as they
man.
approached in force.
We'll show you.
In this
Next
time,
time.
we would learn more than the speed of the approach of the pyramids. Osiris would also expand his endeavors to fight for the future of the Guardians. He would go out to the edges of the system, beyond the heliopause, and would recover from some dark place an undisclosed seed of some sort. This was recovered, and at the advice of Marasov, who used Brother Vance to deliver the message to the Warlock Master, was planted on Io. It is believed, and all but confirmed by the presence of a token of Osiris beneath the Tree of Silver Wings on Io, that this seed would grow into the Tree of Silver Wings that we now see. The tree which bloomed at first with light, and then, with the arrival, fell into darkness. "5 months ago, we beheld the darkness's arrival. Time was no longer on our side, and for the first time in living memory, we would see the pyramids loom above our worlds. It would begin with the sudden attack on Rasputin that completely decimated the Warmind systems. This was a crippling blow, and the only reason even a fragment of Rasputin still lives is due to Anna being able to restore a part of his system data into a frame body
Welcome to the
that she
trials
would
of
then
Osiris.
evacuate from Mars, along with herself and her ghost. But the pyramids would first be shown in force above Io, and they would arrive there in a hold position over the cradle, where Osiris had seemingly planted the Tree of Silver Wings. Slowly, over the next few weeks, we would see the darkness begin to
nothing but
corrupt
the
the
enemy.
tree as its
This
paracausal
fight.
energies slowly seeped into the tree and even into the world of Io itself. Beneath the tree of silver wings, Eris Morn would meet us every week, after we had disposed of the interference from Nokris, who was now a supplicant to Savathun. Each week, a new message would be delivered to Eris Morn and to us. This would once again give us hints of the intent of the darkness, and would even at one point reward us with the ruinous effigy. This weapon of darkness was a reflection of the purpose of the pyramids that started over Io and would soon spread to Titan, Mars, and Mercury. It was an engine of conversion,
You stand
transfiguring
alone.
our
Do not
foes
give up.
into transmutation spheres that would be weapons of
Opponent
sharp
revived.
purpose against the enemies of Sol. Eris Morn would be
1
determined
minute
to
left, my
prevent the
friend.
darkness's power from being stolen by our enemies, and so we would
Your
work with the
opponent took the
Drifter
round.
and Eris
Takes the
to
net.
respond whenever the darkness's pyramid scales made contact across the system. These smaller ships
behind,
would touch
but
down on
not
the
for
surface of
long.
Io and Titan, and where possible, we would siphon that dark power into the banks that the Drifter deployed. This would help to at least somewhat contain the darkness, and for the most part, we would be able to keep it out of the clutches of Savathun, whose Taken were always clutching and clawing for that power to be kept for themselves, to stop us from claiming any part of it. This was not the only source of power we would see, though, and this was not the only place where we would seek answers. The darkness presented a question, and the Drifter would seek to have it answered in particular by the
Only
Nine.
one ally is
He
left.
would usher us
It is
into the
in
hall
their
so that together we might ask the question of these strange
hands.
beings.
You lost this.
And the
Does
question
not
was
matter.
simply this:
Wins the next one.
what is the true
Opponent
nature
revived.
of the darkness? In the hall, the Nine crafted their realms
You are
into an
behind,
answer.
but not
As
for
we
long.
battled through the Taken within, we would eventually come to comprehend that the darkness, much like the light, was simply a tool, a means to an end. This was the most direct call that we had seen to treat the darkness as a source of power as separate from the darkness as a moral compass to judge the universe by. It made it clear that those who used darkness were not necessarily evil, and that the power of the darkness had to be controlled without it corrupting us. In the final days of interference, we would eventually find ourselves facing the supplicant of
Opponent
Savathun
revived.
directly. And here we dealt a final death blow to Nokris, once and for all. As the
Only
supplicant
one
lay
ally is
defeated,
left. It is
and
in
his
their
efforts to stop us from communing with the pyramids completely faded,
Your opponent took the
we were
round.
transported
Takes the
into
net.
utter darkness, and beheld a room within which many of the races of Sol were shown as
This
statues,
score tells only half the
transfixed in the
story.
darkness,
You tell the rest.
staring at a pyramid in the sky. We can only presume that this space was within one of the pyramids themselves, given that our ghost was possessed by the same dark voice that had possessed it on Luna when we had entered the pyramid there. It beckoned us to a place of cold. It beckoned us at last to Europa, a place of great secrets and ancient
Only one
power
ally is left.
that would
It is in
soon
their
be
hands.
ours.
This one was for your end. Next time, my friend.
I hope now that you understand more of what we know. Darkness
Your
has become a
opponent
greater
thinks
part of our
they will
lives as
win.
guardians, and now there is
Surely.
nothing we can do to prevent it from nesting within the system forever. But the most stunning thing to those of you who are so far uninitiated will be that the darkness has taken hold within us. But do not fear. This time will be different from the horror stories of old, where Reza Lazir corrupted himself with cruel weapons of strength. We wield a fragment of the truth
Only
now.
one ally is
With
left.
it,
It is in
the
their
powers of
hands.
our darkness are
Next
unlimited.
time, my friend. Next time.
Go now. Go to that wasteland in the Jovians. Find the truth. Find your
I
purpose.
have been
It
disintegrated.
will be here
before
that you discover what it
Very
means
discouraged.
to wield a
Take
true
up,
measure of
count your
power.
wins, and return.
We have many more mysteries ahead of us, and the darkness is just one part of an ever-expanding tale. Europa itself will contain many of its mysteries. But today, for the moment, I shall consider you more informed But know this, as we part, the darkness is powerful, and we would be fools to reject that power. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you if you made it all the way to the end of the video. A shorter, massive video, I'm sure, but certainly one that had a lot of assistance in terms of its creation. In particular, I want to go ahead and thank Drexis Animations, as well as all the people who are appearing in the credits in the description for this video and at the credits here at the end. We will very much be looking into continuing the use of animation in our videos, and hopefully this is just the first of a few outings that Drexis and I will be going on. I do hope that this will be a future returning part of what we see on the channel, and I'm very excited to present it to you here for the first time. If you enjoyed the video, a shout out also needs to be given to a few other people. First of all, I need to
Trials of Osiris. Your ghost cannot help you here. Look to your fire to bring down your opponents. Only one ally is left. It is in their hands now. Opponent revived. This round is theirs, but you can win the next. Your opponent's lead. You can come back from this. Only one ally is left. It is in their hands now. This round is theirs, but you can win the next. Opponent revived. Opponents have the lead. Take it from them. One ally is left. It is in their hands now. You lost this round. Does not matter. Wins the next one. You are trailing, this is true. It only matters if you let it continue. Only one enemy is left.
Guardian down.
The opposing team is down. You are the final blow. I cannot wait to see how you turn the tides, so I will not go do it.
Guardian down.
It is just you now. Fight until you have nothing left. You lost it. Does not matter. Wins the next one. Match point. Take back the fight.
Guardian down.
It is just you now. Fight until you have nothing left. Next time, my friend. Next time. You will bring all these lessons to the next fight, I know. I look forward to that rematch, my friend.